Praise the name of the living God. Now today I want us to look at the book of Romans. This book has some good things in it. There's a lot we can learn from the book of Romans as a church, as believers. And this book, that is the book of Romans, that Paul dictated this book to a disciple, a Christian secretary by the name of Tertius. The church there in Rome had a good report. Their report was good, and their faith was spreading all over the world. So Paul really he desired to travel to Rome to meet these believers. And as he desired to travel to Rome, he also looked forward to go to Spain in order for him to extend his ministry of preaching the good news, the gospel. Now, Rome was founded in 753 BC. And by the time of Paul, Rome had a population of about 1 million people. Some say 4 million. And by that time, Rome had 400 temples, which most of them were dedicated to the pagan worship. So, imagine a church that confesses to be a follower of Jesus, a true worshipper of God through his Son Jesus Christ, in the midst of a city like this. Rome really invested in roads. By the time of Paul, all roads led to Rome. So Rome was at the center of trade and commerce by the time of the early church. So you might be asking yourself, how did a church begin in Rome? Who was the founder of the church in Rome? Because Paul was not the founder. Rivers of ink have been devoted into explaining who and how the church in Rome began. But the book of Acts gives us an answer to that. In Acts, the book tells us that during the time of Pentecost, that there were people who traveled from all over the world to Pentecost, to Jerusalem. And some of these were Romans, proselytes. So we highly believe that some of the people who were present at the time of Pentecost and people from Rome went back with this message, and the church in Rome began. And this church, the majority of the people in the church in Rome were Gentiles and Jewish people. So when he is writing the letter to the church in Rome, he had three categories of people in mind. First, he had the moralists, and then he has the pagans in mind, and then the religious people in mind. So when Paul is addressing the Roman believers, he makes sure that he addresses these people individually in a way that is in accordance to the ways of the Lord. Hallelujah. So the question is, how did this letter get to Rome? Remember that Paul was in Corinth, and while Paul was in Corinth, he met two couples by the name of Aquila and the wife Priscilla. These couples had come from Rome, where the emperor there had a mass deportation of the Jews who were living in Rome. So when Priscilla and Claudius got to Corinth, they met Paul. Both of these people were tent makers, so they stayed together and they did the work of tent making together. So it is during this period that Paul heard about the church in Rome, because we strongly believe that Priscilla and Claudius were some members of the church in Rome. So Paul had a good report that the church in Rome had a good reputation. So by the time Paul leaves Corinth, Paul had planned to travel to Jerusalem because he had a giving. He wanted to deliver a gift to the needy believers in Jerusalem. So instead of Paul traveling straight to Jerusalem from Corinth, Paul decided to go north towards Philippi. The reason is Paul was avoiding a plot by the Jewish people, leaders, who were plotting to kill him. So Paul traveled north towards Philippi. On his way to Philippi, he went to Cenchrea, a church near Corinth, and he met a lady by the name of Phoebe. And he gave the letter to Phoebe, and Phoebe delivered the letter to Rome. Phoebe was a traveling businesswoman by that time. Hallelujah. So stay tuned, stay with me as we dive deep into the book of Romans. God bless you.